Good evening, everybody. Sometimes I really hate technology. Trying to fight with everything, trying to get everything to work the way it's supposed to, but that's kind of ironic considering what I'm going to be talking about tonight. Because I'm going to be talking about going forward by going backward. And there we go. That's the picture I was trying to bring up. That's not quite what I had in mind, okay? Why is it that people change things? Because they're trying to improve them. Everybody wants progress. They want something better. They want to take what they've got and make changes to make something better. But when you take something that God has given, there's no way to improve upon it. When you take God's faith and change what he has delivered, doing something any other way isn't an improvement, it's sin. How have people done that throughout history? Well, you can go all the way back to the beginning. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with most of these examples because you know them. Adam and Eve. You go back to the early chapters of Genesis. There was not a question of what Adam and Eve were supposed to do. There was not a misunderstanding of what God's commands were. But they thought that their way was better. Go forward just a little while. Cain and Abel were given instructions how to worship. They weren't recorded for us, but we know because of what's said about those offerings that they had been given instructions. And Cain chose to offer something to God his way instead of God's way. Was he unable to do what God said? Well, he must have been because his brother was able, right? Okay. I'll be on the front pew afterwards, but okay. But tell me something. How do you fix a problem like that? First of all, not Cain's way. What should he have done? He should have gone back to what God's instructions were. Not made further changes, but gone back to what God's instructions were on how he was supposed to worship. Fast forward a little while. When Moses went up Mount Sinai to get God's law, as soon as people couldn't see him there, they got restless. So Aaron gathered the people's gold together. He made a golden calf. You remember what he said? Not here's a different God. This is the God that brought you out of Egypt. And they began to worship that golden calf the way that they had seen people worship back in Egypt. Well, what was the way to fix that idolatry? To go back to what God had commanded. How about in Jeremiah's day? This is what I want to try to really focus on tonight. We're going to be looking at a lot of other things just for the sake of context, to show that this is not one isolated moment in history, but I especially want to focus on Jeremiah. Jeremiah 2:13. God said, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewed them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." How many people have tasted fresh spring water coming right out of the ground? Cold and fresh. Isn't that something? Think about what that must have been like, that kind of picture, for people who lived in the desert, for people who had a constant daily worry about water. Imagine a fountain of living water. And what had they done instead? They turned away from that fountain of living water. And not only had gone to old cisterns, a pit where you might be able to store some water if you were lucky, but they were broken, cracked, and they couldn't hold any water. If you were in the desert, which one should you want? But they had forsaken God, the fountain of living water. And instead they turned away and they were drinking from those broken cisterns. They turned away from God, who would give them everything they would need. And they were worshiping these dead, meaningless, worthless idols. So what message did God give them to try to fix the problem? The same message that had been given before. Jeremiah 6:16. Thus saith the Lord, stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk therein. Anybody ever been lost? Any of you lost now? Okay. If you're out and you're lost, you don't have a GPS, but you kind of think you know where you are. What should you do? Well, you stop and you look around. Well, if you're there at the crossroads, you look the different directions. You stand there, you see. You look to see which one of those roads is the good road. Which one is going to lead you back the direction you're supposed to go? That's what God's calling for. He told them to ask for the old paths, not something new. but the old paths. Not just ask for it, but walk therein. Walk in the old paths. Anybody ever stop, get directions, and then get back in your car and go the wrong way even after you just got directions? Anybody ever put something in the GPS and then drive off, not listen to it? Hush. It doesn't do any good to ask for the old paths if you don't walk in them. What did Israel say? They said, "We will not walk therein." They said, "We're not going to do it. We refuse." Which is why, shortly after this, they went into captivity. This was their last chance. They had the opportunity to come back, but they wouldn't. Well, what are some other examples? How about Jeroboam? Anybody remember King Jeroboam? There's a phrase that usually goes with his name. I think it's like 21 times the Bible uses the phrase, Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who caused Israel to sin. Every king after Jeroboam was compared to him. This king was wicked, who followed after the ways of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who caused Israel to sin. This king went beyond Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who caused Israel to sin. This king was wicked, but not as wicked as Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who caused Israel to sin. He was the yardstick for wickedness. How'd that start? When he took over, he began to reign over the northern kingdom. The problem was Jerusalem was in the southern kingdom, and people were told to go there 3 times a year. And he was afraid if people went there to worship God, that they might not come back, or that spies might come back, or that in some way people going there would cause him to lose his kingdom. So he built golden calves. Sound familiar? Put one in Dan and one in Bethel, the city furthest north and furthest south in the northern kingdom of Israel. Told people they could worship at the calf of their choice. He changed the feast days, and he changed who was to lead worship. He put in new priests who weren't qualified according to God's commands. Well, what would it take? What did it take to fix all these problems? Well, that happened in King Josiah's day. In his day, this had become so widespread, the things that started in Jeroboam's time, that people had almost forgotten what God had actually said. Well, they were doing some renovation work on the temple. And when they were doing it, they found a copy of the law of God. And they weren't really sure what to do with it. Did you know there was a law that the kings were supposed to copy the law. They were supposed to copy the Bible by hand. You know how many of them did it? If you look at the way they reigned, probably none of them. But under King Josiah, they found the Bible. They read it. They realized that they had not been doing anything even close to what God had actually commanded. So they started following what the Bible said. And they followed what it actually said without the generations of changes that had been added. And guess what? The Jewish religion was restored. He fixed what was wrong by going back to what God had actually said. So what about the problems of our day? Well, how many people are going to be surprised when I say it's going to be the same solution? We want to go forward, we've got to go backward because we've forsaken the old paths. There are so many people that have said, well, we've got to do godly things. But the compass has gotten so messed up, nobody can even identify what godly things are nowadays. There are people in Washington saying, thank God for Planned Parenthood. For years, there have been so few who have actually been following what God said. But just like in Josiah's day, really, just like in Jeremiah's day, just like in Jeroboam's day, just like in Adam and Eve's day, the problem is not in the availability of God's will. It's there. It can be found. It can be read. It can be followed. It just has to be read and followed without change. And what will happen? Christianity is restored. Not some new religion, not yet another, but the same thing that they had from the beginning. It's there again. Once again, things can be God's way. There may be some here tonight who haven't been doing things God's way. There may be some who have but haven't continued being faithful. If there's anything that you need to do, take the opportunity to make things right. And if there's anything that we can do to help, we ask that you would come forward in simple, obedient faith as together we stand to sing a song of encouragement.